International's second annual Women's Appreciation Event. I am Tina Jordan, Vice President of Membership at AFCEA International, and I will be your Master of Ceremonies this afternoon. I would like to extend a very warm welcome to our award winners, their families and guests, and AFCEA's distinguished guests here this afternoon. We are so glad that you took your time from your activities out from West to join us this afternoon. To start the festivities, I would like to introduce Lieutenant General Robert M. Shea, U.S. Marine Corps retired, President and Chief Executive Officer of AFCEA International, to make a few remarks.
Well, thank you very much for being here this afternoon. I'd particularly like to thank our sponsor, Booz Allen Hamilton, who signed up for the Premier Platinum sponsorship, and that is certainly much appreciated by all of us who've taken the time to come here today. Booz Allen is a sustaining member of AFCEA International and one of AFCEA's biggest supporters. So again, thank you to Booz Allen. Here today is one of Booz Allen's Hamilton senior executives who will be introduced shortly, so we'll just hold off on that for a few minutes. Our other sponsors are HP, who are gold sponsors, Cisco, which is a silver sponsor, and Georgia Tech Research Institute and Walker Associates, Sengex Limited Liability Corporation, and JTSI. It's been another great response from our sponsors this year, so again, thank you very much, and we look forward to putting together this event again next year, and we look forward for your support as we get ready to do that and we move forward. Women in AFCEA was started by AFCEA International Membership Committee in 2013 by co-chairs of the Membership Committee. Subcommittee is chaired by Andy Field of OCTO and the Consulting and Ashley Becker of SAMS. We're very proud and pleased to be able to recognize these women and your women's contribution to AFCEA in this way today. This year's theme is Women in Computing, and we're happy to have a senior representative from the Anita Borg Institute with us today to share her thoughts. I didn't realize this until a little bit earlier this afternoon, so somebody can correct me on this, but there is a building on North Island that is named after Admiral Grace Hopper. Is that correct? So that is a little added touch to what we're talking about today. And this presentation today and the ceremony is an excellent tie-in to our Navy-centric conference at West as we honor Rear Admiral Grace Hopper's contributions to computing. One of the unique opportunities that I have is to working with a very special woman who happens to be my boss. And she's a pleasure to work with, and so at this time I'd like to bring forward Linda Gooden, the chair of AFCEA International Board of Directors, who has been a strong supporter throughout for women in AFCEA. So Linda, would you please come up?
Good afternoon. All right, you guys can do better. Good afternoon. All right. And so this afternoon we have a wonderful program. We're going to hear from someone from the Anita Borg organization, which will be a special treat. I have a special affinity with the women's group. This year it's focused on computing. I spent 40 years in the computing field, and I was fortunate enough with 6 colleagues to start the Women's Leadership Forum in Lockheed Martin. When we started, we had 6 women. When I retired last year, we had over 400 women, and that is director level and above, so quite an accomplishment. So I have the honor of introducing our speaker, and Jenny Brooks. Jenny Brooks is a principal at Booz Allen in Hamilton. She is a member of Booz Allen Hamilton San Diego's leadership team and is responsible for managing several Navy client accounts at SPAWAR and PEO C4I. In this role, she also oversees Booz Allen's portfolios of acquisition, program management, cybersecurity, and data analytics capabilities. Previously, Mrs. Brooks established the Booz Allen San Diego's Women's Forum, an employee forum dedicated to professional development and promotion of women at Booz Allen. In 2011, she was elected Vice President of the San Diego chapter of Women in Defense, where she currently serves as president in this role. Ms. Brooks leads local activities dedicated to networking and mentoring of women in the defense industry. And she also supports STEM activities benefiting local universities and schools. So I'd like to bring up Jenny to the stage.
Good afternoon. On behalf of Booz Allen, we're proud to be here as a premier sponsor for the second year in a row celebrating women in AFCEA. And we're excited to honor the legacy today of Rear Admiral Grace Hopper, acknowledge the Anita Borg Institute for its impact on women in computing, and to offer our congratulations to the 4 women who will be honored this evening with awards. As Booz Allen celebrates its 100th year in consulting, I am particularly proud that our new CEO, Horacio Rosansky, has been a long-time outspoken advocate for developing women's careers in technology consulting. He talks frequently about the importance of bringing your full self to work, meaning leveraging the full range of your life experiences, work experiences, and knowledge we hold as women, and applying these to the business challenges at hand. He stresses that more points of view ensure that our clients' challenges are seen through multiple lenses, which drive better results. At Booz Allen, women play a powerful role in overseeing our business by sitting on our board, running our business in the senior executive suite, and driving new ideas to solve our client challenges around the globe. One of these women is Natalie Givens, Senior Vice President at Booz Allen, who sums up why support for women in technology is so powerful to her personally. She often shares the story, "I went to MIT where I majored in electrical engineering, I competed in ballroom dance, I sang in the band, and I developed my personal mantra, be authentic and fully present. Upon graduation, I had offers from a dozen companies. 11 of them wanted me to work in a lab designing something, and Booz Allen offered me broader opportunities to not just work in a lab, but to also work with clients, solve tough challenges across business lines, and to be true to my whole self." While Booz Allen is named annually to the best companies to work for lists, the real success stories aren't found in the magazines. They're found in the successful careers of those like the women we'll honor tonight. They laid the groundwork. They paved the way for women in computing and related STEM fields, and they continue to make an impact every day. Those women include our keynote speaker today, Ms. Barb G. Ms. G has 35 years of experience in the computer and nonprofit industries, where she has held leadership roles at Hewlett-Packard, Silicon Graphics, and the Oakland Unified School District, as well as with her own consulting practice. Ms. G earned her Bachelor's of Science in Electrical Engineering and Computer Science from UC Berkeley, go Bears, and her MBA from the Sloan School of Management at MIT. She currently serves as Vice President of Programs at the Anita Borg Institute, is a native of San Francisco, a product of the public school system, and is passionate about the opportunity that technology careers offer to Americans pursuing upward mobility for their families. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Barb G.
Good afternoon. So of all the times when I've been introduced, I'd have to say Go Bears is probably the best part I've ever seen. Thank you. And also, I was the first to go to college in my family, so UC Berkeley holds a very dear place in my heart because it did change my life and changed my upward mobility. Majoring in engineering didn't hurt. I'm curious, have any of you attended the Grace Hopper celebration? Okay, well, you're going to have to come this year. I'll talk a little bit more about it later. How many of you know about Grace Hopper? Great. Andy called me and told me about this event and asked if we would be able to come and speak, and particularly she was excited because Grace Hopper's legacy is so interwoven in our programs. Our signature program is the Grace Hopper Celebration of Women in Computing, so she's right at the core of our organization. Because I oversee a big conference, I know that the last thing you want to do is hear me talk to a lot of PowerPoint slides. So I'm going to make this light in the spirit of recognition for women that you are awarding today, and I'll talk a little bit about the issue of women in computing, but really introduce you to some people, some women role models, really, in computing. So the first thing I want to show you is I found this amazing video that summarizes Grace Hopper's life in a few minutes. So we're going to show you that, and then right after that, show you part of an interview that's very famous that she did with David Letterman. And the reason I wanted to show you that is because it really captures the spirit of her personality and who she was. And I think it's pretty delightful. I wish I could show you the whole 10 minutes, but we don't have time for the whole thing. So, Howard, roll 'em.
Know some amazing women? Join Women's Stories as we highlight Grace Hopper, an amazing computer scientist, one of the first, and a U.S. Navy Rear Admiral. Grace was born in New York City in 1906. She was a curious child, and at age 7, she decided to see how an alarm clock worked. She took apart 7 clocks before her mother figured out what she was doing and took away 6. She did let Grace continue to investigate 1. Grace applied to Vassar College for early admission, but was rejected. She was admitted the next year and graduated from Vassar in 1928 with a degree in math and physics. She earned her PhD in math from Yale in 1934 and returned to Vassar to teach math. During World War II, Grace joined the U.S. Navy Reserves as part of the Mark I computer programming staff. While working on the Mark II computer, a pesky moth was stuck inside. Grace remarked that they were debugging the system. Today, we still debug computer programs, and Grace's moth is preserved at the Smithsonian. Next, Grace joined the team developing the UNIVAC-1, the second commercial computer developed in the U.S. Grace created a compiler to translate source code into computer language. In 1959, she worked on the committee that defined a new computer language, COBOL. Grace believed that programming languages should be close to English rather than machine code, which was the convention. She first retired from the Navy in 1966 at the age of 60, but the Navy recalled her to active duty because they still had work for her to do. By 1986, when she finally really retired, she was a Rear Admiral. After her final retirement from the Navy, she received many honors and traveled and lectured widely until her death at 85 in 1992. She is buried at Arlington National Cemetery. Today, Microsoft's Hoppers, the Grace Hopper Celebration of Women in Computing Conference, and the USS Hopper are just a few of the enduring tributes to her. This video is a Women's Stories production. Women's Stories is an open collaborative effort of women around the world to inspire, encourage, and celebrate women's lives.
Our first guest tonight has credits that are far too impressive for any guest on this program. This woman recently retired from the United States Navy as a Rear Admiral and was, until that time, the nation's oldest active military officer. She is also a pioneer in the computer field as well as a brilliant and charming woman. Please welcome Admiral Grace Hopper. Grace, thank you very much for being here. A little messy, I'm sorry. Thank you very much for being here. Have you ever
to be here?
Thank you. Have you ever seen this program?
I'm afraid it's too late for me. I have to get up at 5 to be at the office at 7.
You get up at 5 to go to work at 7?
Well, it's a long ways from Arlington, Virginia, across the river and down through Washington. We used to have a boat that went from the Pentagon down to the Navy Yard.
But-
Mr. Carter took it away.
Oh, President Carter.
Very sad.
What, did he commandeer it for private parties, or what?
No, he decided that it was using too much energy.
Oh, I see. It was a conservation measure. So then you're working a full day now for a private firm, right?
Yes, for
How-
Digital Equipment Corporation.
Digital
Got to
equipment?
get that in. They're a good outfit.
Okay. And how long ago did you leave active service?
31 August at 2400.
Now, see, that's
It says the 2400 in the orders, too.
2400 is
Midnight.
Oh, midnight. Yeah. Was there a wild celebration at midnight when this took place?
No.
Yeah.
I was asleep.
You were asleep. So you went to bed in the service and you woke up out of the service.
Well, there's something you learn in your first boot camp or training camp. If they put you down somewhere with nothing to do, go to sleep. You don't know when you'll get any more.
I think that may be office policy for us upstairs too.
Possibly.
Now, Grace, you mentioned boot camp. Now, when did you go through Navy boot camp?
1944.
44. And what kind
Up
of?
at Smith College.
Was it tough, physically demanding?
Mentally demanding.
Uh-huh.
All those youngsters that came in with me, they could still memorize things, and I'd forgotten how.
I see. So you.
You can't memorize you can't derive the organization of the Navy. You have to memorize it.
So you were older than most of the other
Yes,
enlistees or
I
recruits.
just barely got in. I was 37.
37. Now, what interested you about going into the Navy at 37?
Well, World War II to begin with. And that's one of the hardest things to tell the people in this country. There was a time when everybody in this country all did one thing together.
Yeah. And you just wanted to get over there and fight Nazis.
Well, the other thing, I had to go Navy because my great-grandfather was a rear admiral.
Mm-hmm.
And if I hadn't gone in the Navy, he probably would have risen from his grave and haunted me.
Yeah. So it's a tradition in your family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then but before that, you also.
I was a college professor.
Yeah. And you worked on the original computer in this country, right?
I was very fortunate. The Navy ordered me to the first big computer in the United States, Mark I at Harvard.
It was called Mark I at Harvard. Now, in those days, the thing was.
51 feet long, 8 feet high, and 8 feet deep.
And that was the pocket model.
That's right. You could put it on a little tiny corner of a chip now.
Yeah. Now, how did you know so much about computers then?
I didn't.
How
I
did
was
you?
the first one.
Yeah.
In fact, I had to learn a lot of things. One day, Commander Aiken came around to my desk and says, "You're going to write a book." I said, "I can't write a book." He said, "You're in the Navy now." So I wrote a book.
You had to write a book, and that was outlining the entire
Manual of the computer.
Yeah. And,
What a process.
Yeah. Now, I know nothing about computers, and you know everything about computers. They've called you
Not everything, all I can.
Yeah. But is there anybody who would know more?
Oh, I expect some of these good youngsters coming along know more.
But you're known as the queen of software. Is that right?
More or less.
Now, you know,
Know quite a bit about that.
that conjures an image of somebody who has a lot of Tupperware parties somehow.
Well, I could give you a nanosecond.
Okay,
if you'd
now,
like
I see,
one.
I don't even know
Howard,
what that
cut.
is, Grace.
So I wish I could show you the whole thing. You can actually go to YouTube and find it. It's kind of a classic interview. But if anything, it shows us that a sense of humor can get us through anything. And I think just her whole spirit is pretty phenomenal. And you had to have had that kind of spirit, I think, to achieve what she achieved. A little bit about the Anita Borg Institute and why we exist. We really look to a future where those people who are at the table innovating mirror the people who are consuming those innovations. Our audiences are primarily individual technical women and organizations that employ technical women. So our mission is really to connect, inspire, and guide. So for individual women, part of what we know is important for building a career is your network. And we provide opportunities to women to build out their network. The Grace Hopper celebration being the most obvious one. Last year in Phoenix, we had 8,000 technical women gathered from 65 countries. In Phoenix, we are going to be in Houston this year, and we are expecting to have to close registration at about 11 or 12,000. Many of you are probably aware through the media that the issue of the gender gap in technology is at the forefront right now. And so in the last 2 years, we have found the demand for our work to have skyrocketed. We were kind of a best-kept secret for a while, but we're on the radar now. For women, providing connection opportunities and then inspiration through role models, because we also know that the other barrier to women electing to go into technology or staying in it is a lack of role models. So we do a lot of promotion of women's stories, just stories to break the myth that women can't be technical leaders. And then we do guidance, we do professional development, we provide resources. It can be anywhere from a college student writing a resume to a woman who's on the verge of the C-suite and learning about whether or not to serve on public boards and what that takes. For organizations, the Connect piece, those of you who want to recruit more women engineers, we help them find best talent. So if you go to Grace Hopper, you're going to find that the recruiting career fair there is amazing. And I can tell you stories about people who've come and recruit. The other thing for inspiration is really benchmarking. So through our top company program, we help you look at the state of women in your company and how that compares to your competitors and other people in your space, so that you have quantitative, data-driven ways to look at where your gaps might be in your company on women's representation throughout the ranks. And then we give practical best practices. Companies, we just know things that have been implemented in different companies that work. Next slide. So I promise you this is the only slide I'm going to show with statistics. I can show you a ton of them. That would be kind of a bummer. I mean, there is a gender gap. We represent, if you look at the computing workforce in the United States, about 10% of the hardware engineers, 21% of the software engineers. A lot of times people talk to me about what we do, and the first thing they say is, we have to get more young girls to be interested in STEM. So that's kind of like the pipeline conversation. What we really believe is we've got to stop blaming the pipeline, because when you look at women going into computing careers, in the first 10 years, we drop out at 2 to 3 times the rate as men. So the culture in which women, technical women graduate and find themselves in at many levels is screening women out. And so our work is not only at attracting and getting more women into the field, but looking pretty frankly at what some of the challenges are once they get into a profession, and looking at ways that we can help retain women in the profession and help advance them. I'll share some resources with you at the end of the presentation, but we do have research reports and other things where if you're looking for more data, we have. Next slide. So why do we care? Many people will say to us, why are we ignoring half of our brains in our society, especially when we need them? All of you, I'm sure, are very aware of how important it is to maintain our workforce of technically savvy people who can work on important projects on behalf of our country. So we care because if trends go the way they are, by 2016, we will only be able to fill half of our IT jobs. And this is pretty scary. So I actually think this is a domestic security issue. We need our workforce here in the States to fill these jobs that are very important. I'm a big believer that you don't convince people that it's important to capitalize on women in the workforce by bludgeoning them with reports. There's plenty of research that shows that there is a business case for employing diverse workforces. That's been documented. People will say to us, make the business case, make the business case, it's there. I think that maybe a couple stories about why it's important to have a diverse workforce might help. I just find it easier to get a little more concrete than just this theoretical stuff. So a couple things. One, I just read a research report on who invents IT. It's an analysis of who's actually submitting patents. And it turns out that if you look at the patents that are being submitted, very, very small percentages of them cite a woman on their team. Very small. But if you look at the patents that are most cited, in other words, they are innovations finding their way into real application, then the percent of women authors is quite high. So there is evidence that among teams that are innovating new technologies that it's important to have a diverse workforce. The other example I talk about is when they first invented the first dictaphone, which of course the target audience or customer base for that would be secretaries. Back in those days, secretaries were all female. Design team, all male. They calibrated the first dictaphone to the design team's voices. Guess what? Didn't work so good. So had to be recalled. That's just one example. A recent example I read about was actually about airbag design in cars. Same thing. The design team was not particularly diverse. And when they first test drove these airbags with cars, there were some not so happy results with women and kids. So that's pretty recent. So those are just some examples of why it makes sense. I could tongue-in-cheek say, well, you know, men invented guns, and the bulletproof vest was invented by a woman. So we need both sensibilities. You know, we need a blend of sensibilities to get the right products out. So what I thought I'd do today in the spirit of honoring women is just tell you about some women that I did research on who are at the top of their fields, who are engineers and are working in government and strategically important work for our country, and hope that that inspires you. I have to admit that when I did this research, I really kind of felt like a loser because these women are phenomenal. And then I realized, you know, not all of us are going to be a four-star general. Not all of us are going to be CEOs, but that doesn't mean that we can't take inspiration from these incredible achieving women and know that the sky's the limit if that's what you choose to do. And so I thought I'd talk about a few of the women that I found who were doing important work for our country and who had technical backgrounds. Next slide. So the first two women that I found were actually the first woman head of DARPA, Regina Dugan, and the current head of DARPA, which is Arati Prabhakar. Dr. Prabhakar was a keynote at our conference last year, so I was privileged to meet her. So Dr. Prabhakar she's a PhD in applied physics. She was the first one at Caltech to get a PhD in applied physics. She doesn't gloss over the fact that her time at Caltech was not easy. So she's very straightforward about the challenges, but she persevered. She also has a master's in EE from Caltech and a bachelor's in EE. I found her story very interesting because when she got out with her PhD, rather than go the route where many people would assume she would or should, to be a researcher or an academic, she actually went to be a congressional fellow and eventually became a program manager at DARPA, where she oversaw millions of dollars of investment in microelectronics. So you'll see, I'm going to show you her talking a bit, but that she really was at the core technology that then gets embedded in a lot of other products. She then was asked to head up the National Institutes of Standards and Technology, and then she went to the private sector. She was a CTO at Raychem, and she also was with a venture capital firm, and then now she's back in government. So I just found it interesting that a woman with such technical credentials found a way to move cross-sector and do some really impactful work. I'm going to show you a little video of an interview by her. I just think the other thing that struck me in watching these women is you can be the best technologist, but if you can't communicate the big picture, the strategic issues in terms that many people can understand, you can be very limited in your career. And all of these women are incredibly articulate and able to not only master technology, but then know how to apply it in the real problems they're trying to solve at very high levels. So let's just hear from Dr. Prabhakar.
I made a little list here of some of the projects that DARPA has played a key role in over the last few decades. You've got the internet, GPS, starting in 1959, virtual reality, satellites, stealth aircraft, UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles, night vision, precision guidance, smartphones, even Siri. I mean, the list goes on and on.
It's a tremendous heritage. And of course, the challenge for those of us who have the privilege of serving at DARPA today, our job is to make the investments now in 2014 that become those kinds of transformations for the next generation.
Give me an example of a surprise that DARPA created.
One example is stealth aircraft that allowed our warfighters to go into very contested environments and evade radar, which was an amazing new capability when that became possible.
The stealth fighter, the B-2 bomber.
Exactly, exactly. And then on the enabling technology side, 45 years ago, DARPA did this sort of crazy experiment, which was to hook a couple of computers together and have them talk to each other. That was the beginning of the ARPANET, which became the internet today.
So Al Gore, eat your heart out, DARPA invented the internet.
So, you know, Al Gore did a lot to make it the real internet that we've got today, but DARPA planted the very first seeds for that.
Yeah. So can DARPA say we created the internet, or they can say we did something very early that got it going?
We created the ARPANET, which was the predecessor network, and the internet grew out of that. And like so many of our investments, we plant these early seeds that create a technology base, and then after that, vast numbers of other people across the technology community and a huge amount of entrepreneurship and private capital, all of that has to happen to turn those ideas in the technology base into the internet and the smartphone that you have in your pocket and the technologies that have changed how we live and work.
So the smartphone too. DARPA had a role in what we now know as the smartphone.
A lot of the technologies that went into the smartphone. So the chip that's in your phone that talks to the cell tower and sends a radio signal actually shares a common heritage with the really sophisticated radars that are on Navy ships that help us see where the adversary is. They both trace back to core technology investments to make semiconductor components be able to send radio waves.
So when Siri just isn't listening to me, can I say doggone DARPA?
You should try it, see what happens. That would be great.
See if she responds, see if she gets it together.
So that was Dr. Prabhakar. She's the first Indian American woman to head up DARPA. And prior to her was the next person, Regina Dugan, who's now at Google. But she has also her PhD from Caltech. I'm kind of wondering if there's a little, inside circle there. Her MS in mechanical engineering and BS in mechanical engineering from Virginia Tech. So after serving at DARPA, she then was brought into Google to basically start up a skunk works. And the skunk works was actually eventually spun off into another business, which is not with her there, but they kept her there. And really what she is kind of known for is bringing entrepreneurial culture and methods to government agencies. So you can look her up. She's done a lot of innovation around radically moving the technologies that are used in government agencies forward. She's also written a paper you may want to look at Harvard Business Review. It was a joint paper by DARPA and Motorola on special forces innovation. She talks a lot about disruptive innovation and how to make leaps. In her specialty for many years really was counterterrorism and defense against explosive threats. She also oversaw some direct support of the war in Afghanistan. So here's another example of a technical woman who has accomplished great things on behalf of our country. Next. Okay, so this is a little controversial. How many of you have seen The Imitation Game? 1%. Imitation Game is a film that's out now. It really profiles the story of Alan Turing, who is a very renowned computer scientist. The Turing Award by ACM is actually like the Nobel Prize of computing. And Alan and the folks at Bletchley Circle in London are credited with shortening World War II through their code cracking work on the Nazi Enigma machine. So if you haven't seen The Imitation Game, you really should see it. It's phenomenal. It's actually, I have a friend that's not a fan of Keira Knightley, and she admitted to me that Keira did a really good job. So Keira actually plays Joan Clark. Joan Clark was a crypto analyst in England, and she was a very critical player on Alan Turing's code-breaking team. She played a critical role in them being able to crack that code. And again, we think it may have shortened World War II by 2 years, so really important work. I also learned that she was, she got her degree. She got a double first degree in mathematics. This is England talk, so some of you might understand that. It's a big deal. And the college she was at didn't allow women to have degrees till 1948. So she was actually denied a college degree, even though she was a star in the mathematics department. She also was a numismatist, which I'd never heard about before. But this is a very specialized field of analyzing coinage and analyzing patterns in coinage, which I thought was really fascinating. It's not something I would do, but that was her specialty. So I had friends that said, don't talk about her. She's not U.S., and people might argue the accuracy of the story, and I just thought, I can't do that. They're up for an Oscar. I've got to talk about it. Next. So Michelle is really interesting. Michelle Westlander Quaid. She's got a BS in physics and engineering science from Seattle Pacific. She's got an MS in optics from the University of Rochester. She's graduated from the Kennedy School at Harvard. She's also a capstone fellow. She spent 20 years in the national security community. She's also very entrepreneurial. She is I was just reading Entrepreneur Magazine, 7 Most Powerful Women to Watch in 2014. So at Google, what she really does is heads up their public sector business in DC, and she finds herself many times translating Silicon Valley speak to government speak and bridging, liaisoning between those two sectors. And she also applied entrepreneurial practices to government agencies. I'm going to show you a little clip of an interview, and again, I won't be able to show you the whole thing, where she actually also talks about technology and the role of technology in important world kind of issues for our country. So I want to show you a little bit of that.
So you spoke today here at the Government 2.0 Summit about UnityNet in Afghanistan. Can you tell me a little bit more about what that will mean towards information sharing?
Well, we're looking at leveraging the power of the internet as a disruptive force for good. If you think about oppressive regimes, and we're still battling an enemy there in Afghanistan, they seek to limit freedom of speech and access to the outside world. So if we can get the Afghans connected to the internet so that they can discover each other, share and collaborate on topics of common interest, as well as reach out to the broader international community that's essentially standing by, ready to support them, similar to the response we saw with the crowdsourcing following the Haiti earthquake. We believe that that will better inform them to make better decisions for their own government stabilities, socioeconomic benefits as well.
So what's the state of connectivity and communications infrastructure there now?
It really depends. In the capital city, you'll see more connectivity. We have fiber laid in. There's satellite bandwidth that can be leveraged anywhere pretty much in the country. And then you have cellular communications. But some of the things that we're dealing with in some areas, the Taliban will shut down the cellular communications overnight. And so that's where the Wi-Fi networks that we can establish by maybe connecting via SATCOM to the internet and building the local Wi-Fi allow people to at least collaborate within a region until maybe their network or cellular connectivity comes up the next morning.
So what kind of Wi-Fi networks are we talking about here?
Cut,
well,
please.
We're looking to build, procure hardware that you can get.
So I'm going to move on to the next person. I know we've got 5 minutes left here. Stephanie O'Sullivan, BS in Civil Engineering from the Missouri School of Mines. She's currently the Principal Deputy Director of National Intelligence. After 9/11, when it was recognized that there were a number of intelligence failures, this role was created. So what she's really doing is overseeing a number of agencies and knitting together the intelligence community to make sure that our intelligence is even stronger. And what I realized in reading through a lot of the backgrounds of these women is how important it is for information technology, not just data gathering, but data analysis and being able to extract insights based on a wide spectrum of data. Now it's called big data, but there are new ways of looking at data and mining it so that we can actually get smarter about what it's actually telling us. So we're way past the days of the bar graphs. You know, this is really sophisticated stuff, and she's right at the center of it. She spent a lot of time at the CIA. She had a pretty interesting story. Her first job, she applied for an ocean engineering job, and she didn't really know whether she was, the reason why she applied and thought she might be qualified is because during that period, her family ended up living on a boat. So she figured she was enough of an ocean engineer, and she got in, and now has had a very successful career. Next. General Janet Wolfenbarger. She is one of a handful of 4-star generals. She is a 4-star general in the Air Force, I believe. She's got a bachelor's in engineering sciences from the U.S. Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs. She was one of the first co-ed cohorts to graduate, and so I think that first cohort has been moving up through the ranks, and here's one piece of evidence that they are moving up. She's also went back to MIT, got her MS in Aeronautics and Astronautics, and has an MS in National Research Strategy from the National Defense University. So again, she's the first 4-star general in the Air Force. And what I found really interesting when I read her story was she talked about early in her career avoiding women's leadership forums. And this is not unlike what we hear from many women in the corporate world. Early in the career, women do not want people to, you know, treat them different. They just want to make it on their merit. And as they move more into senior roles, they realize how important it is to be role models and to give back and to help the women behind them pull up. So I just thought that was fascinating to hear this story from her when I had heard it from so many other women in the corporate world. Next. So I did spare you a lot of our traditional slides that are a bit gloomy and doomy and why we, feel bad about the situation with gender equity. I didn't want to do that, but I do want to talk a little bit about what we can do and what actually does make a difference. Next. This is where I do shameless promotion. The Grace Hopper Celebration of Women in Computing, again, the largest gathering of technical women in the world. We hosted close to 8,000, and we had men also attend that. A lot of the men that attend come to me and say, gosh, it's eye-opening to be in the minority and to actually feel what it's like to be in the minority. Next. This woman is Maria Clave. I don't know if any of you have heard of Maria. Maria is a college professor, university president, actually, of Harvey Mudd College. Harvey Mudd is very famous as a model for getting more women into computer science. So in the last 5 years, with a concerted effort, Harvey Mudd has actually moved the percent of women who elect to major in computer science from 15% to 40%. And how did they do that? They had a three-pronged strategy. One of them is any woman who's a freshman who wants to go to Grace Hopper, whether they are interested in computer science or not, is able to do that. We have data from 5 years of doing this that show stark correlation between women electing to go and women who have attended Grace Hopper. So that's one. The other thing they do is they retool their introductory computer science class, because a lot of times in universities and even in high schools, the introductory class is really a weed out class, not a weed in. And women feel that in particular. So if you haven't been, playing in the computer hobby club all through high school and you go to college and you go into a class and it's all about showing off what you know, you might weed yourself out pretty easy. So they retooled how they do intro. And they also offered undergrad research opportunities to women and find that these 3 things make a big difference. That's how they got from 15 to 40. We're now involved with a consortium. We are co-managing with Harvey Mudd 15 colleges, heads of computer science, who are going to apply this strategy. So we hope to spread this successful strategy across the country. Next. The other thing, if you go to our website, there's lots of research, there's lots of data. There's also an organization, a sister organization called NCWIT, National Center for Women in Information Technology. They have tons of resources there if you're looking to get more data. So Anybody recruiting, I do have to say that 2 years ago, an engineering executive at a financial services company came up to me at the Grace Hopper celebration. He said, "Barb, I've been managing hundreds of engineers around the country. I don't know why we never came here to recruit. I talked to 11 people today, 9 were excellent fits. I went back and saw him in New York 2 months later, and he said he had given out like 23 to 25 offers. So if you are recruiting, you really should consider, we just opened up our sponsor sales for the event this year, which is in October. So I want to end with just one really cool, this is an iconic talk. I don't know how many of you have seen Grace Hopper talk about nanoseconds, but I'm going to show you, this is just a famous talk by her, and we will end with that. Thank you.
Hopper.
They started talking about circuits that acted in nanoseconds, billionths of a second. Well, I didn't know what a billion was. I don't think most of those men downtown know what a billion is either. And if you don't know what a billion is, how on earth do you know what a billionth is? I fussed and fumed. Finally, one morning, in total desperation, I called over to the engineering building, and I said, please cut off a nanosecond and send it over to me. And I've brought you some today. Now, what I wanted when I asked for a nanosecond was, I wanted a piece of wire which would represent the maximum distance that electricity could travel in a billionth of a second. Now, of course, it wouldn't really be through wire. It'd be out in space, the velocity of light. So if you start with the velocity of light and use your friendly computer, you'll discover that a nanosecond is 11.8 inches long. The maximum limiting distance that electricity can travel in a billionth of a second. Finally, at the end of about a week, I called back and said, I need something to compare this to. Could I please have a microsecond? I've only got 1 microsecond, so I can't give you each one. Here's a microsecond. 984 feet. I sometimes think we ought to hang one over every programmer's desk or around their neck so they know what they're throwing away when they throw away microseconds. Now, I hope you'll all get your nanoseconds. They're absolutely marvelous for explaining to wives and husbands and children and admirals and generals and people like that. An admiral wanted to know why it took so damn long to send a message via satellite. And I had to point out that between here and the satellite, there were a very large number of nanoseconds. You can explain these things. It's really very helpful, so be sure to get your nanoseconds.
Thank you, Barbara, for that wonderful presentation. Thank you for sharing Grace Hopper with us and for sharing all the work at the Anita Borg Institute that you are doing. In appreciation of you being here with us today, we have a copy of a biography of Admiral Grace Hopper, the Grace Hopper Admiral of the Cyber Sea, and it is written by Kathleen Broome Williams and published by the United States Naval Institute. So we'll give that to you at the end of today's session. Now we will move to the awards portion of our program. This is the second year AFCEA has presented its Women's Appreciations Awards, and we again have some incredible recipients. This award is for women who have gone above and beyond to further the careers of women, including supporting their careers, mentoring women, promoting STEM scholarships, advocating on the behalf for their promotion, and actively developing shared opportunities for females in the workplace. I would now like to invite to the stage Linda Gooden and General Shea to present the awards to the recipients. The first recipient is Norma Corrales, former Senior Director of the Education Foundation. Norma connected a large number of new AFCEA female chapter officers with effective mentors and introduced AFCEA Educational Foundation female volunteers to other professionals to assist them in their careers. She personally acted as a mentor to female students and business professionals and assisted numerous female students to acquire scholarships and transition them into the workforce, as well as helping countless female STEM teachers acquire and apply STEM teaching tools and grants in the classroom. Norma created and executed numerous types of STEM scholarships for future female STEM teachers, underserved female STEM students, female veterans of the War on Terror, and ROTC students. Norma could not be with us today, but Mark Gorenflow, former chairman of the AFCEA Education Committee, will accept the award on behalf of Norma Corrales today. Mark? The other winner not with us today is Doreen Jakubak. Doreen is a member of the Education Foundation Board of Directors. She was involved in a broad range of programs supporting female business and government professionals in her past role as president of the AFCEA Northern Virginia chapter. As a member of AFCEA's International Board of Directors, Doreen served as chair of the Diversity Committee. She has invested countless hours to the Education Foundation and contributed personal funds to the support STEM education programs, helping to create, launch, and execute the AFCEA STEM Teacher Scholarship Awards Program. Fred Rainbow of the United States Naval Institute will accept the award on behalf of Doreen Jakubak. Thank you, Fred. I would like to invite to this stage our next award winner, Shirley Adams. Shirley is currently Vice President at General Dynamics Information Technology. She has promoted females within industry for many years and is eager to help less experienced women by mentoring and navigating them through government and industry channels in order to further their career. She promotes STEM among the young female and male future leaders of America and is a judge in San Diego County's competition to select the most talented science project students for recognition and scholarship awards. Shirley has a history of hand-selecting candidates to personally mentor for highly placed positions within both government and industry. She nurtures many women both inside AFCEA and GTIT. So Shirley, it is an honor for us to present this AFCEA Women's Appreciation Award for you today. Shirley, we're going to ask you to make a few comments.
Well, thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank AFCEA International for this wonderful award, and thank you to all of those folks who are out there in the audience. You know, I can honestly say my career would not be where it is today if it weren't for AFCEA. I've been very honored and privileged to serve and support with the women and men of our nation who, you know, put themselves in harm's way. And I really, truly do believe that leadership starts and ends with servanthood. And if we can truly learn how to be good servants, then we naturally become good leaders. And so it's really been a privilege of mine to be able to mentor not only women, but also men. We started the Veterans Retraining Initiative a few years ago, which was supported by AFCEA International, and we were encouraged to do so. And I think that's been one of our most rewarding programs because it's put us in a position where we could not only teach and retrain veterans, but also help them to understand as they were transitioning out into the workforce, really what the workforce was all about. Women in computing, compared to so many of these women that you've seen, I barely can stand in their shadows. I've been told that what I don't have in brains, I make up in tenacity. So I think that that's one of the key notes too. Whenever I'm mentoring someone or working with women, and men included, you know, it's not just a women's game, but you know, it's all of us working together. I think one of the most important things is to be comfortable in your own skin. And if you're comfortable in your own skin, you don't mind giving back and mentoring people. And I think women have a little bit of an advantage there because we're natural nurturers. So again, I thank you all very much. I appreciate all of the support that I have here. I appreciate working with the local chapter, the Camp Pendleton chapter, and certainly with AFCEA International. Thank you.
So now I would like to invite to the stage the next recipient of the Women's Appreciation Award, Rebecca Cohen-Hirsch. Rebecca is Senior Vice President at Inmarsat. She has led the Women in Nova program at the Northern Virginia chapter of AFCEA for the last 3 years, overseeing 11 events with almost 1,000 participants, bringing together senior female business and government leaders such as Ms. Terry Takai, former Department of Defense Chief of Information Officer, Cindy Moran, DISA Director, and Nancy Harned, Army Deputy Assistant for Research and Technology, to speak and discuss professional development for women. As a member of the Senior Executive Service in the Department of Defense, Rebecca helped establish a mentoring program for senior GS civilians and transitioning military. She arranged for all WIN program proceeds to be applied directly to women's STEM scholarships and has found women mentors to participate in NOVA's Adopt a School program, which provides role models for girls at all school grade levels in support of STEM education. Rebecca, it is an honor to present to you today the AFCEA Women's Appreciation Award.
Well, this is rather humbling, to be honest. Thank you very much to AFCEA International and, of course, to the local chapter that I support, NOVA, for this recognition. It was really humbling. This is the first time ever in my career and anything that I've been able to do with a team of people that has actually acknowledged the fact that I'm a woman. From the very first mentor that I had, which was my second grade math teacher that I kept in contact with until she died, to my very first wing commander that saw something in me, that spirit of giving back and helping others has been so core to everything that I've done. The truth is that I have done very little. I've worked with teams that have been phenomenal and have been able to showcase what they've been able to contribute, and that certainly is the truth with Women in Nova. The mission of Women in Nova is really to support and improve and increase. And that applies not just to the women that are the membership, but to this community that we support. Being part of AFCEA to foster that ethical dialogue between industry, academia, and government is so important to the furtherance of national security, to economic prosperity, and to the extent that we can improve and increase and support the advancement of women in STEM professional careers and throughout their education to enable that in a meaningful way is truly an honor to be a part of that community. So on behalf of the ladies of WIN, I thank you for this recognition, and I look forward to seeing what we're going to do together for the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, General Shea, and thank you to Linda. Please join me in one last time in congratulating all of the award winners today. These women are some of those forging the way ahead for women in AFCEA, and we look forward to celebrating the accomplishments and more success stories of other women in years to come. So thank you. To close out our recognition ceremony today, I hope you take away the message that AFCEA is an organization where anyone can engage both to support the mission of the armed forces and to personally and professionally develop leadership and networking skills to further their career and benefit those around them. As we close today's ceremony, I want to thank Women in Defense for spending time with us today. Again, I want to thank our sponsors. Thank you to Booz Allen Hamilton. Thank you to HP, our gold sponsor, to Cisco, our silver sponsor, to Georgia Tech Research Institute, Walker and Associates, Senjex, and JTSI. Thank you to all of our sponsors. Thank you for all of you for joining us today, and have a great rest of the week at West.